So there has to be constant efforts to keep evolving. What does it mean to empower a woman in, let's say, in the 21st century? It may not necessarily be what it means to empower women in maybe in the 19th century. I think this is part of the arguments people have when they're talking about, oh, there is no need for women empowerment now, because previously what women faced before, for instance, not having voting rights, is no longer the current problem at the moment.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Inspire Africa podcast, where we celebrate the voices of and achievements of African women, both home and abroad. My name is Bolanle Udilobo, and I'm your host. And I'm excited to be kicking off our very first episode to commemorate the International Women's Day that was just a few days ago. So before I go on, just a brief about Inspire Africa and what we can expect from this podcast. So at Inspire Her Africa, we are dedicated to empowering women and promoting gender equality. Through our mentorship program, we provide mentorship opportunities and support for women at every stage of their careers. And now, with our podcast, we aim to amplify the voices of inspiring women and spark meaningful conversations about women's empowerment and inclusion. Right. So, what you can expect from this podcast. So, in each episode, we'll bring you thought provoking discussions, insightful interviews, and inspiring stories from women making difference in their communities and beyond. So, you can expect career tips, personal antidotes, and literally everything you can think of relating to, adulthood as a woman generally, and in the career space. Okay. What we can expect from today's episode celebrating International Women's Day with the theme Inspiring Inclusion is that we'll be exploring what it means to create a more inclusive world for women, both in the workspace and in society. And who better to discuss these topics with than two remarkable women who are making strides in their respective fields and also happen to be co-founders of Inspire Her Afrika. So joining us today are Chidima Oli and Ojonwa Abubakar. And so just a brief about the incredible women we'll be discussing with today. So Chidima Oli is a public health professional with expertise in population health studies and health interventions. She's passionate about improving health outcomes and addressing key gaps in epidemiology. And Ojonwa Abubakar is a bioinformatician with a background in microbiology. She specializes in infectious diseases and antimicrobial resistance using genomic data analysis to tackle health issues. I mean, that's a mouthful, honestly. And so both women are clearly very passionate about helping other women grow and empowering them to attain their own successes. So while they are not busy saving the world from diseases, they are ensuring that the African women have access to mentors that can help with their growth. So welcome Chidima, welcome Ojonwa. We're honored to have you both on today's episode. Right?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I correct my name?
Oh, please go ahead.
Yeah, it's Ojonugwa.
Ojonwa. Am I bad?
Wow.
Okay, so I will just call you OJ. I think it's simpler so that I don't
Yeah, no, it's fine.
put my name upside down. Okay, so let's just get right into it, really. I mean, to kick things off, right? I feel like we need to start with the burning question. I feel like that is on a lot of people's minds today, right? So, do you think that women have been empowered enough? I mean, this conversation has been going on for the longest. And you can even say that some people are a bit tired of hearing the word gender equality or women empowerment. I don't understand why, but clearly it's a conversation that's been going on for a long time, right? So do you think women have been empowered enough? And is there still a need to drive the movement of gender equality? And so we can just start with Chidima first and then, move on to OJ.
Thank you very much, Bolali, and we're super excited to be doing this. And I'm sure that you're a wonderful host. So I think you're right. I think that women empowerment is something that a lot of people are probably tired of hearing, probably not really understanding what it means. To answer your question more directly, I don't think women have been empowered enough. I see women empowerment as not an event, right, but a continuous process. So, to empower someone means to give the person some part of, if it's power, courage, just almost at the same thing as encouraging someone. So you are doing something. So I don't think that women have been empowered enough because I don't see empowerment as an event. That's a one-time thing, or maybe we're organizing a women empowerment program and then we're done. And then at the end of it, ooh, being able to empower women. So it's a continuous process. As long as there is a girl child out there, as long as there is a community of women out there, there's still more work to be done. And I feel like there is still, because of that, there's still more need to drive gender equality. I feel like there's still more need to equip women because empowerment is really equipping women, right? So there are lots of things around us. Women have very unique experiences that oftentimes I would say tend to disempower them, right? So as long as those experiences are there, as long as there are societal biases, there is still need for more work to be done. So I mean, I think that's just, I would say what I would think about that or say about that. I don't know, maybe Fuji has something else to add, or maybe a contrary opinion.
Well, thank you, Chidima. I mean, I feel like the most important thing I took out of that was the fact that there is still a lot of societal bias, right? That's the key thing. And if there is those bias, then So let's hear from OJ. Let's hear what OJ has to say. Maybe she's not necessarily
Yeah.
more.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to be controversial. I don't know. I think I agree with Chidinma. There's still a lot to be done. And it's I would say that it's encouraging to see that some of the issues that the things that were issues in the past were resolved. I mean, we can say that there's been progress, and that's quite encouraging. I mean, it started from getting women to vote, getting women's voices to be heard, getting women to go to school and stuff like that. And there's still a lot more to be done. And I think quite markedly, one of the things I've noticed in the past few years is that there's this divide between the progress of women empowerment in like the in high income countries or the West, so maybe as opposed to low and middle income countries or developing countries. So yes, I am currently studying at a vet school, and I remember during our induction ceremony, we were given a tour of the vet school, and like the history was shared with us. And then we came before this very big picture that had been blown out, like a mural, a painting. And then it was a picture of the founding father of the school and the first set of students. And it was an all-male picture. Everybody in the picture were guys. And the person now just opposed to the current reality where more than 60% of the students are female. And in fact, a lot of outreaches are made to recruit or kind of like entice male students to attend veterinary school. And it was like 200 years ago, which was when the school was founded. The founding fathers would not have imagined that this would have been a thing at any point. So again, as I said, there's a lot to be done. But I know that when you go to school in Nigeria and at least I'm going to use Nigeria as a case study, and other parts of the northern Nigeria, maybe, and other parts of the developing countries, you see that this is not necessarily reflected. There's still that there's still the issue of education and how female children get the girl child is able to get access to education is still a big issue. And that is something that has been tackled like the world has moved on from like 200 years, like 200 years ago, and then in developing countries we're still talking about it. So there's still, I would say, there's because of that divide between what is happening in gender equality in the north and the south, women still have to be empowered. I think which is why Inspire Africa comes in and has this focus on Africa specifically, because we can see that generally women around the world need to be empowered, but women in Africa and in other developing parts of the world have to be empowered even more to catch up to what is the standard globally, not to talk of the actual gaps that still exist now. So I think that's it for me.
Thank you, Jay. I think that, again, you mentioned something very important as well. I mean, even though that conversation has been there for such a long time, there's still a lot of divide in terms of where it originated. Okay, what country, women empowerment sort of bursted out from, how that country has progressed as opposed to, other countries. And then there's the fact that we all need to catch up, right? So I don't think this is something that can end anytime soon. I mean, I'm sorry for those who think they're tired of hearing the word, but unfortunately, that word, I mean, for as long as these gaps still are there, and who knows, we don't know how long that would take, but that's something we all need to be driving constantly, and we should not get tired of hearing. So I think it's important that people know that this is not something you need to get tired of, no matter how misconstrued or, turned around the conversation sounds. At the end of the day, we know the most important thing in what we're trying to achieve, right? So, I mean, you mentioned divide. You said divide a lot of times when you were giving your feedback, OJ. So how do you think fostering a culture of inclusion, right, can benefit women's empowerment? So we know the gaps are still there. We know women still need to be empowered. So how can we foster a culture of inclusion, and how can that benefit women empowerment generally?
So I think it's kind of boils to what Chidima said when she was answering her own question. She talked about like societal biases, and I would say one way that we can kind of foster a culture of inclusion is helping people realize that there's this innate bias or innate stereotypes that may not necessarily be true. I think they're called stereotypes for a reason and biases for a reason, because we generally believe them to be true when based on just some whatever arbitrary measure, when they're not necessarily true. And so people have to recognize that they have this bias, and they believe these stereotypes are not necessarily true. And they have to recognize that there are differences. I think one of the problems with the world generally is where we tend to like to oversimplify problems and try to have a one size fits all solution or approach to solving issues that does not necessarily work in a lot of cases. So for the issue of gender, for instance, and inclusion, a lot of times people say, oh, but we are giving people fair, everybody can compete equally for job, everybody can compete equally for stuff. And why are women not getting it? Women are not getting it because they're not good enough. And a lot of times when you go back and look at the systems and the structures and the eligibility criteria, people are not considering the unique differences or the unique circumstances that being female present. I don't know if I've even explained this well at all, but a lot of times we just feel that, yeah, because there's a baseline, we have put in place a set of requirements, everybody should be able to pass it regardless. But again, everybody has their own special circumstances. Everybody, just even being female, I think nowadays they call it intersectionality. It's something, and gender also plays a role in that. So gender plays a role in that, race plays a role in that, a lot of different things that makes human being unique, such that just a one rule, a basic kind of thing does not fully cover it or give everybody equal access. For instance, there's the issue of, just one issue, for instance, is talking about things like, oh, maternity leave and how women have to take maternity leave because they will have children. And that is something that kind of impacts their career progression. That's what the last Nobel Prize in economics was on. She did a study on like she kind of had an exposition on gender and its effects on economics, and she won a Nobel Prize for that. And what she showed was that childbirth kind of greatly impacts a woman's career, and was trying to propose changes to that. And that's something that on a normal day you'd be like, okay, yes, you had a child, we said, okay, take time off work. How is that supposed to impact your career? That's something people can say. But studies have shown that it does indeed impact a woman's work. And so the world should be trying to come up with solutions to that, and not just say, oh yeah, I mean, we're not sacking you because you had a child, so what's the issue? So I don't know, but this is so yeah, we have to come up with specialized solutions, and not just kind of one size fits all regardless of age, gender, whatever. So I'm not going to keep talking for long because I'm sure there's a lot to say about this, and I'll just let Chidima yeah, give her own response.
Oh, okay. Sorry, let me start from where OJ stopped. Okay, so I think that probably I'll piggyback off what Oji mentioned earlier, or the earlier question, also, and just to tie it in terms of if women have been empowered enough. I also think that every generation presents with its own unique experiences or experiences that are very unique to women, right? So I think that merging that together, efforts will always, so when we think about women empowerment, there would always be something that is unique to a particular generation that was not unique, that was not found in the previous one, right? So there has to be constant efforts to keep evolving. What does it mean to empower a woman in, let's say, in the 21st century? It may not necessarily be what it means to empower women in maybe in the 19th century. I think this is part of the arguments people have when they're talking about, oh, there is no need for women empowerment now, because previously what women faced before, for instance, not having voting rights, is no longer the current problem at the moment. However, women still have needs to be empowered, right? So I just wanted to bring that up first before I start talking about how I believe fostering a culture of inclusion can benefit women. And it's funny when OJ talked about maternity leave, I think that's one of the things that really came to my mind. I think, first of all, what is inclusion, right? So people think of inclusion as, oh, maybe something I'm doing as a favor to women. So when I read when you asked the question, I started thinking to myself, what does culture mean? And I remember during social studies in in primary school, we learned to define culture as the way of life of people, right? So we want to imbibe inclusion, that is, including women, making sure that women are seen, heard, right, and their impacts are felt. Let that be a culture. So it's a normal thing. So it's not a thing of pity, right? Because I also think that one of the, I would say, negative biases associated with inclusion. People think of, oh, well, oh, there she is. She's a woman. She's weak. She can't do anything. Let's just include her, right? But that's not necessarily what that is. So it's a culture of ensuring that women's voices are seen. It becomes a way of life. Now, in across different sects, whether it's in the career, whether it's in the office space, wherever it is, I think that this would largely benefit women because it will help maximize women's potential, right? So the instance OJ gave about maternity leave, where I currently study and work, I saw it was I think it was a bath or a booth rather, a booth for breastfeeding mothers. So women, if you're working, for instance, for a while, you could go just breastfeed your baby in a very comfortable booth. And that's really awesome, right? I feel like any woman working in such environments will not feel like turned to choose between her personal, like her family, or maybe her career, would also feel very much included. I think also I think another way this would benefit women would be, as I mentioned, bringing out the best of their potentials, right? Because generally, when people don't feel seen or heard, they begin to think, maybe I don't matter, maybe my voice is not necessary. I think having that voice, every individual, I mean, irrespective of gender, anyways, needs a voice. Your voice is what authenticates your personality and it gives you ability to speak in a table. If you're not able, if you don't feel like you belong in a table, you're not going to make any comments. And the problem with that is, so first of all, let's say for instance, you get a job, right? And then you're part of a team. The first day you're talking, everyone looks at you, you don't say anything. The first time they excuse you, second time they excuse you, the third time, well, people are going to probably think you're dumb. And there's not going to be another chance for that, or even if there is. So I feel like this is one of the best ways to empower women to see that, hey, right? You have everything that it takes, irrespective of societal bias, whatever it is, to become the best version of yourself. So, just to summarize, fostering that culture where it becomes a way of life across organizations, across institutions, of empowering women. How best can I equip a woman around me? How best can I create an environment where she thrives fully for her to maximize her potential? I think that would be a game changer for us in our generation.
I mean, I've just been nodding. I mean, if you could see me, you'd probably be like, "Oh, this person is really feeling me." Because honestly, I completely agree with you, right? From even when you started just talking about how generationally these things differ, right? And as we keep evolving, as the world keeps evolving, the way we look at things, the way we even look at women empowerment and inclusion also needs to evolve, right? We are seeing people learn new things about themselves that they were not aware of it. And so inclusion is even all that more important, because it's not even just enough to, include women, but even women generally, the term women, it covers a diverse range of people, right? And so even in that, you also have to look deeper and ensure that you are including, women of color, you are including women from this minority field, you're including women from this religion, women, because at the end of the day, they face different, maybe not completely different, of course, but there are different aspects to, the things that hold them down, right? I'm talking about things that hold people down in your respective fields. So Chima, I'll go ahead and just start with you, since you're the last person to talk. You've conducted research on population health and maternal and child health, right? And how do you see inclusion, especially women inclusion, playing a role in improving the health outcomes for women and children, specifically for themselves?
Oh, yeah, that's a very awesome question. And I think that inclusion is very key to improving women outcomes. Also women and children, right? So you look at the population, what's the population of women generally, right? You also look, I think that one of the key things, so we were taught something in school. So when you're looking at percentages, or generally you come to a class and then you say, oh, everybody here is Black, for instance, right? So, but then you want to tailor down. By the time you come down to looking at individual units, you now start what population of people, like what are the skin tones? So bringing it down to most of the health challenges, for instance, I would say in Africa, are largely grouped into poverty-related diseases, right? So you have either communicable diseases, infection, things like that. I'll use Nigeria as a typical example. I think in 2016, the WHO released the proportional mortality, or major causes of death in Nigeria, and one of the major causes of death is due to maternal and child health related issues, either during childbirth, either post childbirth. Children are more vulnerable to die as newborns, and women are also more vulnerable to die during childbirth or labor, or issues associated with pregnancy, and things like that. So if the unique challenges that women are not, the unique challenges, okay, better. The unique challenges that women face are not included, then this poses a problem, right? So I'll use, for instance, even for research. Recently, I reviewed a previous research on, it's called the Women's Health Initiative, that generally looked at health outcomes for women. And part of the driving force for that was because previous research were largely focused on men, right? So in as much as they're making conclusions, let's say, for instance, people are more likely to die or out due to a particular risk factor, those findings were largely based on research done on men. So the Women's Health Initiative was kind of like an initiative to how do we do something that, and because we know that men and women vary, for instance, how do we conduct research that can generate findings that are unique to women? So if we're not having studies like this across different sects, it's going to be a problem, because I can't generalize the finding that I get, or when I conduct a study on children and then try to trade that off or try to implement that finding across to women. So I feel like inclusion plays a very key role in improving the health outcomes of women and children, because they are highly vulnerable, right, to lots of health challenges, both during, like I said, pregnancy or childbirth or after childbirth. So I feel like there has been, over time, there's been largely improvement, but across board, there's been disproportionate studies on women, right, and their own health outcomes. If this is not present, it poses a problem. So I think I'll stop here for now.
I feel like you said a lot that at the end of the day, this cannot just be a one-off conversation. It should not be a one-off conversation. It's something that we need to, ensure that people keep having. Because, you think about what's it called? You think about inequality, you think about some of the segregation or separations that, or biases that women still face. And it never really comes to just the regular person, someone who doesn't have your background, right? It doesn't really ever come to the person that, oh wait, there could be an issue, there could be a bias even in statistics, right? Even in research, the fact that majority of, or most sample sizes of most, data collected are from men, and that doesn't necessarily reflect how this specific research affects women, particularly women that are pregnant. I mean, it's one thing to just do it generally on a man. It's one thing to do it generally on a woman. Then it's a different thing to do it on a woman that is pregnant. And it could have a completely different effect, right? It could affect the birth rate, the kind of child, the woman birth, so many things. And it's, one never really sits down to think about this. So thank you for bringing that out, to us.
But can I add something just very briefly?
Yes.
I think also when I just remembered, so when for my master's dissertation, my focus was on infertility, right? So for a very long time, people had thought of infertility as a thing for women, right? So if a woman is not having, oh, it's your problem, it's a woman problem. But interestingly, actually, one of the major causes of infertility is called male factor infertility, where it's not primarily maybe because woman has ovulatory issues or tubal diseases, right? But it's also contributory of a factor that's contributory to their male partner, right? And inclusion in that area means that, and what most fertility studies try to do now, and to the best of my knowledge, is to include men in studies like this, right? So that this study is not just based on women alone. It's not a women thing. So if they're getting perspective or studies on perspectives of women on infertility, men also have to be included, right? Because it's a partnership, right? So if we don't hear the voices of men, right? Because I don't want to say if we don't hear the voice of men in such studies too, there's a gap, right? So that's another way to also, remove certain stigmas of certain, when I say health conditions that largely be appropriated to women. I wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, and that's actually very important. Because I think it's vice versa, really. At the end of the day, if you say this is a woman's problem, you are really stifling the information that could be gotten out when this is research on men and the potential effects it has on some men and their lives and the life they're living. And also the same thing, you say, oh, this cannot apply to a woman. You're also stifling the research, that could have prevented certain issues, be it maternal, be it just regular hormonal, different issues that could, happen to women based on the fact that this research isn't readily available. I mean, it's one thing for the research to be there, but then when it's such a little number compared to the other information out there, then, it's still not accessible. So that's honestly I mean, like I said, this is a conversation we definitely need to continue, right? So I will just move on to OJ now, right? And OJ, your work focuses on infectious disease and antimicrobial resistance. And I even hear there's a sprinkle of tech in that as well. And so can you share how inclusivity and collaboration across disciplines contribute to finding solutions to these global health challenges?
Yeah, thank you, Bolanle. Thank you so much. And I think I would just start by talking about inclusivity and just kind of talking more about what the last point Chidima was trying to, one of the points that Chidima made, and when she was talking about just including women in research, which is something that's quite interesting, like completely blew my mind when I learned that we're not included in a lot of research. And it's even quite just minus female humans. So normally in infectious diseases, to find cures, most times what they do is they conduct experiments on animals. So they kind of like model the disease and then apply treatment or just try to understand the disease in like models. And sometimes they use things like flies or mice or stuff like that. And it will be surprising to realize that even in these animals that people have to do experiments on where they then abstract it to the human population, they still, for some reason, only work on male mice, which is again quite fascinating. And even on this level of like models, like lower creatures, you still see that there are sex differences. And one of my like colleagues on my PhD now, what her project is on is just essentially repeating research that had been done on male mice and female mice and trying to show that there are differences even in these populations. And so yes, they can, because of that, the treatments that are proposed, like the treatments that are found from these model studies, do not take into account the differences in the sexes of the organisms, and as well do not take into account the differences that will exist in the human population, the difference in the sex in the human population. So like it kind of just propagates through everything, really, just this. And people think it's not a big deal, but clearly it's a big deal when there's a difference already. And I would say that including female scientists, generally, just the abundance or the presence of female scientists is one of the things that's unveiling these things. Because, for instance, she's female and she has taken upon herself to do this research to again point out quite clearly that there's a difference to how people react to sicknesses or how people react to treatments just because of hormonal differences of the sexes. So I would say including women in science makes it such that women are able to solve female health related issues. People talk about how like female reproductive there's a joke I think I see a lot where people talk about how if the kind of issues regarding like fertility and childbearing, if they were male issues, it would have been solved a long time ago because male issues tend to have a lot of funding, a lot of just let's say will to be solved compared to women's issues that just seem to be like normal. So having the inclusion of women makes it such that health issues that face women particularly are solved quickly. Then I would say that another thing is the fact that women are brilliant and they are half of at least half of the working population. So if between 18 and 65, we kind of sort of have an equal distribution of male and female. So leaving them out would be major, but including them, phenomenal. And it's proven. Like I think one of the last major breakthroughs in the field I currently work in genomics was carried out by two females who discovered a technique that helps us to study do genomic manipulations much easier. So women are brilliant people and no doubt. So they should be included. And I would say across disciplines, how this helps is that fields such, I mean, there's science, like the science that does experiments, the science that does questionnaire surveys and all those kind of things to answer questions, answer scientific questions quite directly through experiment and data collection and stuff like that. But there's also like the social sciences and particularly stuff like anthropology that gives us insight. What they do is to study anthropology and sociology, and what they do is to study just the human interaction or how culture plays its role on health. And so they call it like the wider determinants of health, which are very important when you look at infectious diseases, for instance. Because infectious diseases, although it seems like it's quite straightforward, it's just, oh, you get a pathogen infect, it gets into you and then you break down, you have an illness. I mean, that is like the basic biology of it. But it's more complex than that, in that there are a lot of factors, for instance, poverty being one of them. Poverty is a driving factor. Even gender kind of plays a role in the kind of illnesses that people have. And these are things that just the mere science of it, like as I said, biology will explain that you get a pathogen and then you fall ill. But when you look into other disciplines that are able to provide context to the situation, you realize that it's more than that. It's more than just it's more than just more than just the biology of the infectious epidemiological triangle. And so things like poverty, for instance, just sanitation and hygiene that comes with education, and then gender, women as homekeepers, as caregivers, all these things tie into how often a household or people with children or people within a household can fall ill. And again, it's very important to have women be educated or have women be empowered, have all the knowledge they need to take care of their homes. Because again, like whether we like it or not, women are caregivers and they will take care of their homes and they will take care of their homes. And so they need to have all they require to be able to deliver that effectively. So across this, as I said, one of the, at least my master's was in One Health, and One Health is is about taking a multidisciplinary and collaborative approach to solving health issues. So as a microbiologist, I knew that initially, I mean, I know the biology of it, that infectious agents cause diseases, but from One Health, I got to find out that, oh, it was more than that. It was more, you had to talk about the geography, the economics, the every other thing. And that's where you see that having inclusion, just minus across disciplines, across genders, across, if there's any form of difference, any form of thing that makes somebody different or an order, it's very important to have that input, because only then will you see things holistically. And when you see things holistically, that's when you can give solutions that actually matter. So I would say for women, I would say, yeah, finding solutions. I mean, I feel like I could go on and on, but I'll say, yeah, having women definitely means that there's better research that can solve women's health issues, and there's better research just altogether for everybody. A good proportion of the population is involved in research, and better findings are made. And then when we collaborate across disciplines, we're able to see things in a new way, in a novel way. And I think one example I can give, it's not even gender related, but it's something about, like, for instance, when there was an Ebola outbreak, Ebola is highly contagious, such that once you touch the person, or like once there's a physical contact, or you touch anything the person that had the infection had, once you touch it, you get infected as well. It's that infectious. And so the public health the WHO recommendation was to burn the bodies of those who had Ebola. But in the communities where there was Ebola, it was not a thing. It was like culturally not acceptable to burn bodies. And so these people will still try to sneak to bury the bodies of people who died from Ebola. And again, because of that, the infection continued to spread. But then it took the intervention of anthropologists, social scientists, and I would say, I know it's majorly a female-dominated kind of field, but that's even aside. It took their input to realize that there had to be a better way to actually involve the community, to make them realize that they were not trying to overrule their culture, but for them to understand the motive behind it, and then work together with the community to find a way where they felt like they were honoring their dead even before burning the bodies. And that was one of the ways that they were able to curtail the spread of the infection. So again, disciplines have to work together, even when it doesn't make sense. Like, it doesn't seem apparent that anthropologists have to be involved in the control of an infectious diseases. Well, clearly they do. And okay, and for stuff like antimicrobial, and for stuff like antimicrobial resistance, for instance, when mothers who are the caregivers of the home are informed that they don't necessarily have to give their children stuff like antibiotics, penicillin, for instance, for a cold, which is one of the, like, drug overuse, one of the things that drives antimicrobial resistance. We've gone a long way. We've gone a long way. So yeah, I hope I've been able to share that
I
inclusion and
know.
collaboration across disciplines is really necessary to
Definitely.
for the fight against infectious disease and antimicrobial resistance. Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, you know what's interesting? But the mere fact that if you sit and try and listen to people conversing about gender equality, women empowerment, generally, there are a lot of talks on education. There are a lot of talks on, the right to work. There are a lot of talks on, like, just women in political environments, perhaps probably even women in media as well, and probably as well women in STEM and science related and mathematics. But it never really cuts, it never really dissects it, as both of you have really, gone further to talk about how very core including women in these spaces, in these fields, are important. Just the fact that at the end of the day, there are so many, there are possibly diseases and infectious and different health challenges that at the end of the day, if a woman doesn't step up to have this conversation, if they're not included in the table to have this conversation, it may go unnoticed, right? Or the voices are not heard. And the mere fact that women play such a large role in the family, just generally and statistically, how many women are in the world, the mere fact that a woman's voice is not included can make all the difference, what I'm trying to say, right? So I think it's very, very important. I think it's very, very clear the things that you have said and the ways that clearly women can play a role in, just changing general people's lives generally, the information that they can contribute. I mean, I've been doing some coding recently, and then one thing that came to my mind is the fact that when you're trying to achieve at a specific solution, right, there has to be logical, there has to be conditionals. It's either this or this. And the mere fact that if a woman is not included, so if her side is not seen in that specific equation, for example, then her condition is not regarded, right? So what you think is the ultimate result may not apply in a woman's body. What you think is the ultimate solution may not apply in a woman's body. It may even apply, but then it may not apply when she's pregnant. And I think that these are important things that we need to have this conversation. And the only way we can ensure this happens is if women are included. So thank you both for, just breaking it down for us in both your fields, right? But then just to, go off that, right? So this question is for both of you, right? So in your STEM fields, do you think that there are rooms and tables in your field that you have fought to get access to? That ordinarily, as it is, you may not have you may not have had access to those tables, to those rooms, to those seats, and so you had to, of course, not physically fought, right? Right, but you had to do some fighting, some pushing to be inside that room or table, right? And so if there aren't, right, that's also understandable. I mean, our careers are still growing, so who knows, you may come across it one day. But if you have come across it, how were you able to achieve getting into that room or getting into that space, and how has that helped your success today or contributed to your success today?
Okay, is it okay if I'll probably just go. Okay, well, I think that for me, I would say too, I think I have two experiences. And like you said, it wasn't like I literally was fighting. I think that probably was a little bit it was a little more difficult to get access. It would have been much more difficult to get access to that. So I'll start with the first one, which kind of like it ties in a little bit to more of what we do at Inspire Her Afrika, and then the other example that has a lot more to do with stereotypes. So while I was studying for my master's in public health, I had a mentor. And I think that, the origin of mentorship, which is what we also try to do before, interestingly, the story behind mentorship was it dates back to ancient Greek, poetry and literature rather. So Odyssey was going to travel, and then he asked someone whose name was actually Mentor, right, to take care of the child. So I think for me, one of the ways I was able to get access to an international opportunity was actually through mentorship. So it was another woman who opened the door for me, right? Who gave me access to that. I didn't necessarily, in quotes, have to fight for it. I know that if I had, it would have been very difficult. So she gave me leeway to that. So that's one way. Now, the second example that I have is a little bit of a funny one. So I think that I started taking on leadership positions quite early in my career. So most times in a team, I'm either probably maybe the female in the team or probably the youngest one in the team. So I remember it wasn't very easy getting to that, particularly because of stereotypes attached or surrounding that. So I remember in this particular instance, there was this guy in my team who thought that the only reason that I was getting, ahead was probably because of, how typically, the normal thing they usually associate women with when maybe you're getting a lot of promotions, right? Oh, you probably have another relationship with the boss that is probably giving that to you. So I think for me, what that did for me was that it made me strive harder to try to prove myself, right? Like I'm getting this, right? I'm getting access to this and more, right? Not because of any other thing else, but primarily because, I'm able to put in the work, I'm smart, God made me smart. So I think that stereotype was something that surrounded me, and it was so funny. I recall when I was handed over to become the program manager, and I had been there for like just for a couple of months actually, and the same guy came and was like, "Oh, this person he was thinking I had a relationship with is leaving. He wonders what I'm going to do now, right?" And I'm like, I have been doing these things before. Right. So it may not necessarily be about like fighting to get access. I think for me it was more of a stereotype. Right. And I think finally, I think another thing was also typically growing up, I was very shy, quite reserved kind of person. And I think one key thing that I had to fight so hard to was to get my voice. Right. And because there's a normal, oh, she's quiet. So oftentimes then when people would go out from, how organizations have conferences, some people will be asked to go out, right? Oh, you guys go. And then I'm the one here, like sitting down. And I'm like, I want to go. You guys, I want to be out there too. But like I said, still because of stereotypes, I had to fight that. I had to like, hey, I may be the reserved kind of person, but there's strength. It's quiet strength. It does not mean that I'm not able to, do things if I'm given the opportunity, right? So I think that in summary, how I've been able to achieve, but I say things that I would have thought to get access to, first of all, mentorship. And that's what we try to, do at Inspire Her Afrika, to encourage women. So as you think of it as climbing a ladder, so as you're climbing a ladder as a woman, you're taking another woman up with you. And then the other woman is supposed to open the door, and it's supposed to help the other woman climb up to the ladder. So I think mentorship, number two, is just being able to break our head out of stereotypes, right? Because people are going to make assumptions of who you are. People are going to make, oh, she's just a pretty face, those kind of things. But then I'm trying to just know that I'm good at this. I'm going to put in my best and work through that. I think that has really been very helpful. And I think the final thing I would say about that is just seeing people as a team, knowing that I think biases are usually subconscious, right? So I recall a very funny story that happened in the organization where I was working. We were going to have I would say a lunch. So someone asked, oh, what do we want to have for lunch? And then one of the guys was like, oh, ask those ladies over there. They are good with that. And then someone was like, how does when deciding what you want to have for lunch have to do with, gender? Anybody can say this is what they want. I think my sister, I think I have a personal experience with story where someone has been asked, go take the water out of the fridge because you're a lady. And it's like, how does those two things, how do they mesh together? So I think just breaking out of those stereotypes, letting people know and standing firm for who you are and what this is my value, these are my values, these are my standards. You're not going to cross them. We can laugh, we can joke, we can work together. But the moment you cross those standards or values I set for myself, I'm going to have to be firm. I'm going to have to be firm and firmly correct you. So I think that's been helpful.
I mean, it's I like the fact that you stated off from the get-go instantly that sometimes this fight to be in this rooms, in this table, sometimes it just takes a woman helping a woman, right? It doesn't even need to be a fight. It just simply takes one woman reaching out and say, okay, come, I'm opening the door for you, come and join us on this table. And so that's interesting because sometimes people feel as though they need to do the fighting themselves, or people think as though they need to, as a woman, you need to build up, you need to stand for it. I mean, sometimes all you need to do is just help the next woman. And it's simple as that. I like the idea of that. And even what you said about the whole office space, it brings to remembrance something similar that happened where, you're in an office, you're new, you're supposed to have a meeting, and people are sitting now about ready to, contribute to that conversation. And someone comes and be like, oh, you, please come. Let's go and get the refreshments for the meeting. I don't understand. I came here to join and contribute to this meeting. You cannot just say because I'm the female here that rather than sitting down and joining this meeting, I should go and get tea for the people having the meeting. And not to say that that's not like anyone can support that, right? You can even hire someone for that reason, but you cannot just say that because you're the only female in the room. Therefore, you need to leave the room and go and get refreshments for those people in the room. But yeah, let's go to OJ now. I mean, I can't wait to hear all the tables that you have flipped. OJ.
Okay, yeah. I mean, to be fair, when I saw that question, I started thinking about it long and hard. And at first thought it seemed like I have not really fought to get access to things. But then I really thought more about it. And to be fair, I think it's just, I don't know, I kind of refused. I don't know. I think it's from my point of view, I kind of refuse to see, um, I refuse to see, let's say sort of barriers any sort of barriers as a result of my gender. So typically, when I apply for stuff or I'm trying to get into stuff, I'm not thinking about myself as a female, and I would say generally, I'm not. I won't think about myself as a female trying to get into the place. And at least so far so good. No one has come to me and told me, oh, because you're a female, we're not going to let you in directly. So I mean, they may have been doors that maybe I've been shot because I'm female, but nobody has come to me directly and said, "Oh, We're short because of that. But let's assume another way for me to look at, I've decided to look at it, is some doors people let you in, and I think it's something that Chidima has mentioned before, and I think that they're doing you a favor, or people around think that you are favored, like, oh, this is a gender equality thing, you're an inclusion hire, or that the way they say diversity hire, you're a diversity hire, like a gender diversity hire. And I mean, I'm a Black woman, so a lot of times I feel like if people pick me, they're getting like double, like they're hitting a lot of boxes. You're picking a woman who is Black, so you're checking off diversity. It's possible for that, and it's possible for people to think that, and then when they see you, they have that stereotype that this person does not really know what they are, does not really know what to do. They're just here because they have to check that box. And really, I would say for me, quite quickly, I set out, but I sometimes you see it, you feel it, you notice the shift, how people's respect for you changes as they come to know you and know what you can do, and they're like surprised that, oh, okay, this person, they did not just pick this person just to fill a slot or just to take a box. This person actually knows what they're doing. And you see that, I actually find it very, very fulfilling when that happens. To be like, oh, this person was just looking at you normally. And then when you start doing your stuff and you are contributing and you are just getting things done, and a lot of times they first try to start over explaining for you. Sometimes I'm like, oh, is this person being really nice, or this person just thinks I'm dumb? I don't really know how to take it. But with time, you see the respect starts to, I mean, you see the stereotype broken down, the respect starts to grow. And for me, I think that is one of the things. So maybe I will not have fought to go to the table, but a lot of times I always fight to get my respect and to show that I deserve my place on that table. Where I am is where I'm supposed to be, and like to make it clear to everybody that I am there. Nobody's doing me any favors. If anything, I'm doing you a favor by being by being where I am, or by agreeing to be with you. So yeah, that's one thing. And I think part of the whole thing about like me seeing myself and not thinking about myself as a female trying to get into a place, because generally I grew up with like seeing like very good mentors, which again is why mentorship is kind of dear to me. I never once doubted. So personally, when people talk about mentors or role models, I tell people my mom is like my number one role model, and I'm very, very happy for that, because when I was born, my mom had me late, and so when I was born, she was at the peak of her career. She was like a deputy registrar at a tertiary institution. So I grew up with my mom like giving orders, like sending people that were my classmates' fathers were calling my mom ma. So that was the kind of dynamic I grew up in. So my mom was a boss. And so this was my normal, this was my day-to-day kind of thing. So I didn't really think it was strange for a woman to be in a position of power, because that was what I just was born into. And so coming out, I started to see, and growing up, I started to see that, oh, it was not necessarily the norm for women to be generally that in places of that much influence. But that has shaped me. And so a lot of times I don't believe that there's a limit to what I can do because of my gender. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. And also, I don't really believe that, because there are people who believe that, women should respect all men just because. So, like, we're all human beings, but any random woman should be giving any random man respect because the man is a man. I can never fully wrap my head around that thing, but I know that there are people who say, like, you talk to this guy like that, and he's a guy or he's a man. I'm like, okay, he's a human being, but let's move on. But yeah, there are those kind of things, and I think is why I would say mentorship. So my mind was open to like possibilities, and I think is what every woman should have. Your mind should be open to like possibilities. Like, you should know that it's possible. There's no barriers to what you can be just because you are female, just because you are feminine. And I think that is one of the things that helped me really, really greatly. The fact that I saw people who have done it, who have kind of broken barriers that were placed on them by society. And so I know that I can do the same even now. So yeah, that's it.
I mean, this is always why it's always important to have conversations with people so that you can hear different, diverse perspectives. Because let's be honest, if a lot of women can grow up seeing other women as the boss, seeing other women in that kind of position, they would most likely, right, grow in the knowledge or in the thought that, okay, I can do this as well. okay, I can be this as well. And that is doubly why it's so important that women need to get to these positions of being the boss. And not just the rare 1, 2, 3, but like multiple, to the point where it's not even such a new thing anymore. It will be so great to get to that point. And I like the fact that everyone has also mentioned mentorship, because I feel like that's the easiest way to even have that outlook. Coming from someone that maybe has not seen that before, or that's not a norm to the person, mentorship is the best way to break out of that barrier circle and see women in their own field, in their own spaces, doing amazing things. So, I mean, if you don't have a mentor yet, and I'm talking to the listeners, right? If you don't have a mentor yet, now is your opportunity. Inspire Her Afrika is your opportunity, honestly. So you should definitely check that out. And so thank you guys again for just, making that clear. I mean, I asked one question and I've gotten so many different perspectives that I think is very important for people trying to break into spaces, right? Just even the mental thought that you are a box that needs to be filled, or you are a box that needs to be ticked because you're a specific color or a specific gender, it already takes you into that space with a kind of mindset. And you have to have it at the back of your mind that no, it's not just because they're trying to find women to fill in the box or fill in the spaces. It's because I actually have something that I can bring to this space, and I should not allow that stereotype to walk with me. I need to defend my position. I need to, defend my stuff, my knowledge, and etc. So yeah, again, thank you guys. I would love to continue having this conversation, honestly, but we should be rounding up. So I mean, last question, right? Looking ahead, what actions do you believe individuals and organizations as well, so you can answer them separately or together, can take to promote greater inclusion and diversities in their respective fields? So you as a person, what are the things you think you can do to promote inclusion? And then there's that of an organization as well. What do you think they can do on their own aspect to improve inclusion? So we can just start with Chidima.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, it's always fantastic to have this conversation. I think generally what conversations do is that they help us think through things and then see perspectives from different areas. So I think that in terms of actions, right? So I think one of the interesting things when I was in primary school, we're learning about different sentences, types of verbs, verbs, nouns, and things like that. I think that actions means that something is a continuous thing. So, right. So I'm saying that this is something that should happen continuously. So I think I'll start with organizations and then move to individuals, or vice versa. I'll start with individuals. I think that firstly, as an individual, as a woman, my own self is to become a good role model and a beautiful version of myself. Like OJ said, I grew up, my mom was, I think that one of the major things that fueled my understanding, right, of what it means to be a woman was also my mom. I think that, growing up, I saw people have to make women choose, right? So you can't be this and then be this also. So you have to choose between two things, right? But then I saw my mom juggle both of them effectively. So I think one way is to find a way to be a model in this. How do I ensure that women's voices are heard wherever I am, right? It could be, and oftentimes when we think about influencing change, people think about, I'm waiting to do the next big thing that will change the whole world. It could be in your little space, right? In the little department, let's say in your office that you're heading, at home, right? How do you educate your male child, for instance? How do you educate your daughter, for instance? How do you bring that or create that environment that fosters that? I think that's very, very important, working on oneself to create a safe space for women. In terms of organization, I would say firstly, and I know it may sound a little bit biased because we run a mentorship program, but I'll say invest in mentorship. People become better when they see something, right? So when I was in secondary school rather, one of the things that my school does organize, they do organize these sessions for us once in a while. So I remember we would have external people come speak to us. So this lady, she was a doctor. I just remember sitting down there, hearing her talk about her career, why she wanted to be a doctor. That imprinted a lot in my life, right? Just seeing her become who she was. I can't remember. I'm sure she probably does not remember me. So I feel organizations should invest in that, right? Invest in seeing women become a better version of themselves. Invest in creating an atmosphere where women train each other to evolve and go and grow. And the beautiful thing about mentorship, people think it largely benefits the mentee, but it's a bi-directional thing. You as a mentor, you're growing, you become better by doing, right? So I think that secondly, I would also say really having these kind of conversations and trainings, right? Um, um, while for I think sometime last year, last 2 years, I took on a job as a healthcare worker, right? And that was the first time I actually was able to, would I say, assist someone on a wheelchair before. I never knew that pushing wheelchair, the rolling wheelchairs were so difficult, honestly, but I never knew. And I was like, this is difficult. How do people like give care to people? How do they manage this? But it has never been my lived experience before. So now, because I know that when I see someone doing that, I feel a different kind of compassion. Like I understand because when I was done with taking care of patients, like I would go home and my hips are literally like my whole body is on fire because I spent the whole day pushing that. So I feel like when we have trainings and conversations and this, oftentimes people don't do better because simply they don't know better, right? So when people are faced with statistics, like this is what is happening, right? Inclusion is not a thing of the past, right? Empowerment is not a thing of the past. This is what's happening. And helping people actually understand what it means, right? When there are people that face doubts once they hear empowerment, they're like, oh, these women empowerment people. That's because there is already, and human beings like putting tags, right? Oh, these people, or people from the East are like this, people from Africa like this. When we start having these conversations, we realize that we're all actually human beings, and inherent in us, there is something like there's something that unifies us. So I feel having these conversations where women talk, men also, everyone is brought to the table, right? We want to hear your opinion. I think the third thing and the last thing I'll say, because I know we're rounding up, is really evaluating as an institution, how far are you going with this? And like OJ said, so that's that people are a number in the statistics. Oh, we have 60% women-led organization. What does that really mean, right? How are you doing that? Have the women in your organization grown, right, while they're working with you? Do they feel like they have a say? Do they feel like they have a voice? Evaluate yourself as an organization. So it's not a perfunctory stuff that you're doing just probably to get grants or, for whatever it is. So I'll summarize, right? Involve women in conversations. And ensure that whatever intervention, whatever thing you're doing, ensure that women have a safe space. You can have maternity, as in maternity leaves, as something very basic. Safe spaces for women to breastfeed their children, right? Without having to feel like, oh gosh, I can't breastfeed my child now. My child is crying. I have a funny instance. This is the last story I'll share, then I'll end. While I was working in a hospital, the lady, because she was so stressed, she couldn't stop working. She was sitting on a lab bench, right? She's a lab scientist, and she told me that she was bleeding. She didn't know. So I think she had a miscarriage or so. So it was someone who walked in and was like, you're bleeding, like you're drenched, you're bleeding. That was when and they had to rush her. And that was because she was overworked, right? And she needed the job. So people keep talking about, oh, previously women don't work. Well, the economy is different. Things have changed. Women have to work now. So I think just creating that atmosphere would really be helpful for women.
Again, each question is like we're hearing different more things that we need to continue having the conversation on. And thank you for just putting it out there in actionable, clear steps, things that organizations and individuals can do and should be doing to just ensure that the world is a safe space for everyone. It's a space where we all can thrive, which is very, very, very important. So I'll just allow OJ to go ahead as well for I round up.
Thanks so much, Bolanle and Chidima as well for the stuff, because I think I'm just going to piggyback on a lot of the things you've said. One of the things you highlighted, which was the first thing that came to my mind when I heard the question as well, was conversations. So I'll say involve women generally in your organization and listen to women, right? Because women have very important things to say. They have unique insights and unique perspectives. So you have to listen to them, because it's one thing to involve them, and another thing to actually listen to what they're saying. And I think that's something that most people have to do, because a lot of times when you involve women are going to challenge the status quo, I feel, because a lot of the things that happen now do not necessarily favor women. And so women would seek to change how things are being done. And so listening to them is definitely a plus. I think one of the key ways that women have changed stuff is, I think it was it was in New Zealand, because I think New Zealand had a female prime minister that did stuff. And I think while she was there, they made menstrual products free, for instance, as a nation, which is something that still blows my mind. It's not free. I don't understand why women have to pay for menstrual products. It's women would menstruate, like it's not something they have control over and still have to pay for. And the funny thing is that in a lot of countries, menstrual products are taxed as luxury goods. They don't even have the basic tax. So which is completely crazy. But having a woman, yeah, change things, listen to them and change things as they suggest. Then another thing is to recognize women. A lot of times, women's voices have been erased, or women's contributions to society have been erased, or just claimed for something else. There are a lot of things that women have done that are not immediately clear. And it ties to one of the things that Chidima said. When you see women do great things, when women see women do great things, women are inspired to do great things. And so taking away from the achievements of women and erasing that is in a way limiting even the women that are coming up. So we have to recognize women, recognize what the women have done, what women are doing, so that and amplify this for the women that are coming up behind, so that there's no limitation to their dreams. They are not restricted in how big they can dream, or they don't think that they can achieve certain things just because they are women. Then again, I'll go back to one of the things I've said, is to start with small actions. I've highlighted the part of menstrual products, like condoms in most countries are given for free, or I think you can get them for free, even in Nigeria, even in countries where there's no, like in developing countries where there's not a lot of resources, a lot of times you can get free condoms because of HIV. Rightly so. I'm not saying we should start selling condoms. No, they're very essential because we don't want people to have diseases. But in the same vein, I feel like we can also make menstrual products free, which is one of the things I really liked on the universities here when I was doing my master's, and even for my PhD, especially for my PhD. I realized that my school has a service where, as a lady, you can order for menstrual products and they will deliver it to your house. And there's no limit. That's apart from stepping into restrooms and then seeing menstrual products there just for you to use. I'm like, oh yeah, these people are putting their money where their mouth is. You cannot just really say you are inclusive, you are doing gender, blah, 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 and you are not doing these tiny things that show that you see women and you recognize their uniqueness and their difference. This is like the very basic way to show it. And that you are really interested in putting your money where your mouth is. So this is something that women can do. And of course, Chidima has highlighted breastfeeding spaces as well. You want to make sure that women have safe spaces. And so that is that's one thing that can be done. And I would say women should also, I think female leadership is something that we're still having issues with. So a lot of times women are let into places, but women are not necessarily let into places of leadership that easily yet. There are fewer female leaders. And a lot of times there's even this trend, there's even a term for it where it seems that women are put in places of leadership when the organization or the company, as it were, is going through a trying period. So when the female fails in that instance, it kind of confirms the fact that females are incompetent. It's something I think it's a Cinderella effect or glass effect. There's actually a terminology for that thing that always happens. But that's not what we want. We want women to be put in place of leadership when things are good, not when things are terrible and then you need someone to take the blame or stuff like that. Women should be put in place of leadership. Women should be sponsored to places of leadership, and not just because they are female, but like because they are competent, because they are qualified for those places, they should be put there as well. And then I'll say finally, everybody should invest in the girl child. The girl child of today is the woman of tomorrow. So everybody should invest in their education, invest in their health and their well-being. And then when the time comes, I would still say sponsor them to their next big break, sponsor them to get to where they have to be. And yeah, that's it for me.
Okay. Thank you both so very much. I mean, some important things that I took out from just what both of you have said is just that ensuring that, as a woman, as an individual woman yourself, you just carry along your other fellow women, right? Regardless of whichever women it is. It's no longer enough to just be successful on your own. I mean, saying that you were the first president, first female president, saying that you were the only female manager in your company, or only female VP, vice president, etc., is no longer enough. It's no longer good enough, right? You have to lay the precedents for other women to accomplish that same feat. And it's not because women are not capable, women are very more than capable. So you need to ensure that once you're in a position like that, you give the opportunity for other women, and you not just give the opportunity, you help them access that same success, because that is truly where women empowerment is. Just ensuring that you as an individual woman carry along other women, ensuring that you bring them along, and it's not just you that has that, achievement or success in quotes. You lay precedents for other women, and as well as, for organization and other individuals, even men themselves, ensuring that you have a woman in mind, right? Simple as ensuring that there are sanitary products in the restroom or your organization, in your store, in your business. A woman walking into that, like, okay, this person had me in mind. And you may not readily think about that as a man, right? Which is important that you ensure that in your management system, a woman's voice is included. You seek guidance for women. You share the story of women. I mean, it may be possible that where you are at the moment, a woman is not in leadership at the time, but you have women around you. So even if it's just to seek guidance for them and ensure that you are putting the things that you are hearing, the things that you are listening into consideration in the things that you do in your organization or as a person. So again, this conversation has been wonderful. You guys have been so amazing. Thank you so much, Chidima and OJ, for sharing your insights and experience with us today. It's been truly inspiring to hear your your perspectives on inspiring inclusion. I mean, a lot of people heard that word inspiring inclusion for the first time, during that, maybe not for the first time, but they heard it during the theme and they're like, what does this exactly mean? But you guys have completely broken it down in your respective fields, and it's something that is easily applicable to everyone else. So thank you once again for your time, and to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to this special and first episode of Inspire Her Afrika podcast. There will be so many more to come, so please do stay tuned. We hope you gain valuable insights and feel inspired to take action towards creating a more inclusive world for women. I know it's already past, it's already Arias, but happy International Women's Day to all the women around. And so we would love to hear your feedback on today's episode. So please reach out to us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn at Inspire Her Afrika. Please feel free to send us an email on info@inspireherafrica.org. We really, really would love to hear back from you on things that you would love to hear from us and your general feedback. And so, yeah, I think that's it. Bye, everyone. Bye to our lovely guests. And see you guys on the next episode. Bye.
Thanks for having us. Bye.